Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This one we are lineup building for week 17 of the NFL season on Draftkings. And if you're new to the channel, the purpose of this video is not for me to spoon feed you a lineup to use in all of your contests. This is just me going through a process of how I would build a cash game lineup. Now you can apply this to your own favorite plays. We don't have to play all the same people. If you want to use some of the guys that I like and maybe I'm kind of leaning you towards playing them, yeah, that's fine. But if you have other plays you like more than some of the guys I talked about, that's totally fine. We can disagree on things. That's the fun of DFS. Everyone's got their own favorite plays, but you can use my cash game process that I use and apply it to yours and make your own lineups. The purpose of this video is to find guys that make sense for cash games, that guys are going to be high owned, a little bit too cheap, and are in good matchups. And this is how I would build a cash game lineup, or really just a single entry GPP lineup as well. But before we continue, if you guys could, as always, just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at Pennell16. And if you're interested in the spreadsheets about every single week for the NFL season, I do projections, wide receiver versus quarterback versus cornerback matchups. I got a whole spreadsheet of everything's color coded. You got all the advanced statistics, target share, all the stats you can name just off the top of your head. It's probably on there. And also have my cheat sheet, my cash game rankings, and my Discord chat as well. And without further ado, let's get into this video. So at quarterback position, I am taking a stand, and I'm going to assume that Kyler Murray is out. Obviously, if Kyler Murray is in, we can't play this guy, but I'm looking to go all the way down to Brett Hundley this week, because when I was making lineups, I want to fit in 2 stud running backs, and I want to fit in a stud wide receiver 1. And I cannot do that without spending down a quarterback. So I'm hoping Kyler Murray is out, and then we can play Brett Hundley here at 4,500. And it sounds like Kyler Murray is not going to play, because I don't see the reason why they would push him to play. He's their star young quarterback. What's the point of risking further injuring his hamstring in a meaningless game versus the Rams? I don't see the purpose of wanting to play him, and Brett Hundley's actually been taking the first team reps pretty much all week in practice, so I'm assuming they're preparing Hundley to start this game. So let's just assume Hundley is the starter, and if he is, great, because he's 4,500. This is almost min price, and he is going up against a Rams team who has indicated that they may rest some key studs. And if he's going up against some backups on the Rams defense isn't elite, but they're okay. But if they're going to be missing Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, that's going to make things a lot easier, especially if there's no Aaron Donald, because Aaron Donald can just take over a game on defense. So it's definitely going to open up some things for Brett Hundley, and he does not need to do a lot to hit value here. He's only 4,500. And the thing I really like about Hundley is that he has some rushing upside as well, because rushing quarterbacks, we usually have to pay top dollar. Like, I think Lamar Jackson, he's pretty much 8K every single week now at this point. Brett Hundley, he's no Lamar Jackson, don't get me wrong, but in the limited time last week, he actually ran the ball six times for 35 yards, and he did not play a lot in that game. I had 49 passing yards, had 5.46 points. I think going up a Rams team that has nothing to play for, it can rest some starters, I think he can get us maybe 1 to 2 touchdowns through the air and get us maybe 50, 60 rushing yards. I will take that all day. Maybe he even gets a rushing touchdown. I will take it. He does not need to do a lot here to hit value, and he's certainly capable of running the system Cliff has put in place for Kyler, and he's cheap. I don't expect much, but at 4,500, he's going to allow us to fit in all the studs we want. So I will take the discount at Brett Hundley at 4,500. This may seem like a stupid play, but the way I'm building lineups this week, I think I can get away with Brett Hundley, because there's not a lot of quarterbacks I like. Because my favorite quarterback was Carson Wentz, but Zach Ertz being out definitely caps his upside. I like his receiving options still, and you're going to see that in a little bit. But I don't really want to play Carson Wentz without a lot of his options, because I could always feel like Miles Sanders could have a good game as well. So I just like spending all the way down. Again, if Kyler Murray does end up playing, I'll have to find someone in the 6K range I like, but as of right now, I'm just taking an assumption that Kyler Murray is going to be out, because I don't see a reason why he would play, to be honest. So now to a more fun position is the running back position this week, and we are loaded. We got CMC, we have Saquon Barkley, Aaron Jones. Jamal Williams is not playing in this game, so I think that makes Aaron Jones a awesome play. If I knew that Jamal Williams would be out in my core plays video, I would have had Aaron Jones in there, because this is a great matchup versus Detroit, and we know he's capable of huge games. He has 19 touchdowns on the season, or no. Yeah, he has 19 on the season, though. He's been a touchdown monster. I think he's a fantastic play. Green Bay does have incentive to win this game. But the 2 running backs I like, so I'll talk about the first one first. Obviously, first one first. But the first one I want to talk about is Zeke here at 8K, and he is an excellent play in my eyes this week. I don't see how I'm going to get away from him. And again, I want players in Week 17 that have incentive to win, and the Cowboys definitely fit that mold. They have to win this game, and they also need the Eagles to lose. But if the Eagles lose and the Cowboys win, they're in the playoffs. As ugly as it sounds, because the NFC East is just pretty much a joke right now. But they both play at 425, so it's not like one will know beforehand. So they're both going to be going full throttle in this game. And, with Dak not being 100%, he's dealing with that shoulder injury. I expect a heavy dose of Zeke, and I think they're going to ride him and just possibly into the playoffs. Again, the Eagles have to win. Have to lose for that to happen. But, the Cowboys are going to ride Zeke in this game, in my opinion. And the matchup is excellent. And I will say, first off, Dallas is 10.5-point favorites at home, which I love for my running backs, especially someone like Zeke, who's not the best pass catcher in the world, but he did see 7 targets last week, which is nice. But I don't expect that on a weekly basis, and they were also losing in that game. But, I think he smashes. I think they play with a big lead. We saw versus the Rams when they had a big lead. He had 24 carries, 117 yards, 2 touchdowns, 34 fantasy points. I think we can see something similar to that. And, Dallas also has a nice 27-point implied team total. And I think a lot of that comes from Zeke scoring touchdowns. And I think he has a monster game on the ground. And Washington's been absolutely murdered on the ground recently by the likes of Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders, Aaron Jones. They've allowed 180 rushing yards per game the past 3 weeks. And they're also 25th DVOA versus the run, allowing a lot of points per game to running backs. Zeke is my favorite running back of the week. And, I guess him and Kamara. But I love Zeke this week. I'm going to be plugging him in. And I feel very comfortable about playing him at 8K. The next running back I like is Alvin Kamara at 7,800, and he just gets a dream matchup versus the Carolina Panthers, and he actually looked good last week for the first time in a while. He broke off a nice 40-yard touchdown, just, right off the left, just went right up the field, no one touched him, and a 40-yard touchdown, and he had a good week, 29 fantasy points, which is his second best week all season, best week since week 3 versus Seattle, and we get a great matchup here versus Carolina. It really is. It's as easy as it gets for a running back. They are 32nd DVOA versus the run, allowing 32 points per game to running backs, which is most in the NFL. They've allowed 25 rushing touchdowns this season, which is the most by 9. That's a drastic margin. Jacksonville is second, I believe, with like 15 or 16. So Carolina is far and away the worst rush defense in the NFL. They're allowing over 130 rushing yards per game. And also, more importantly, the Saints actually have incentive to win for a higher seed this week. So the Saints are going to be playing to win the game. It's not like they're going to, just half try, pull Kamara after a couple plays. That's not going to be the case. The Saints will be playing this game to win. And I will say there could be a risk where if the Saints get up by like 21, 28, yeah, maybe they pull their starters. But if the Saints are winning by 21, 28, I have to assume that Alvin Kamara probably had a good game. So I think he probably would have got his work done. And again, this is just such a good matchup. And the Saints are also 13-point favorites, and they have a near 30-point implied team total. So I just think they smash. And I think it's on the hands of Kamara and maybe a little bit of Latavius Murray. But I think Kamara smashes. Michael Thomas is going to have a good game as well. But gotta love Kamara here. And no matter what happens, his floor is always safe with his targets. He's averaging over 7 targets per game. Has a 20% target share, which is second only behind Christian McCaffrey. Love Alvin Kamara. He's basically a part-time receiver. One of my favorite running backs in the NFL. Looked good last week, so I think he smashes. And I love my 2 running backs this week as of right now. I got Zeke and I got Kamara. I think they both have 30-point upside in their respective matchups. So now we'll move on to the wide receiver position. And I love Michael Thomas. I love Julio Jones. And I love Devontae Adams. And I want one of those three in my lineups this week. So I'm going to take the discount at 8K with Devontae Adams here because he's the cheapest of the bunch. And he's got similar upside as well. So Devontae Adams, just another guy in a team that has incentive to win, as the Packers are looking for a bye week, and they're going to want to beat Detroit because they have incentive to win. I just don't really see how Adams flops here. Detroit's just terrible on defense at this point of the season. They're allowing 41.6 points per game to wide receivers, which is 4th most in the NFL. They're also 29th DVOA versus the pass. And Devontae Adams is just a dominant wide receiver. He's tied for second with a 30% target share with DeAndre Hopkins, and same with the weighted opportunity share as well, tied for second with DeAndre Hopkins. So volume is never an issue. And all the wide receivers on the Packers, they're just hot garbage. So he's going to be force-fed targets like he is every single week. And Alan Lazard, MVS, Allison, Kumaro, Jimmy Graham, they all suck like a lot. They're not good at all. So Devontae Adams, he's like the only guy. Him and Aaron Jones are the only guys on this offense. So I think they're both going to have some pretty good games here. And I love Adams this week at 8K. And yes, he's going to be seeing some Darius Slay. But Darius Slay has not been that great this year. So I don't care about it. I would welcome a shadow. I think Devontae Adams eats him up. And they have a 27-point implied team total. So I think Adams and Jones both have solid games. So I would take Adams at 8K. And I think he gets you another 25-plus fantasy points. His targets, he had 16 last week, 13 targets the week before that. So I like him quite a bit here. I think he's an awesome play. So we're going to plug him in. And again, I love the start to this lineup. We got Zeke, we got Kamara, we got Devontae Adams. I'm feeling pretty good. All these guys have 30-plus point upside. So now we got to get some cheaper wide receivers at this point, and we could look at a guy like Greg Ward, who I think is one of the best value wide receivers of the week. He comes in at 4,700, and this is really just a smash spot for him. So he's been producing lately just out of necessity. So he had 5 targets last week, 9 targets versus Washington, then 9 targets versus New York, 7 points, 19 points, 11 points. And Jeffrey's gone, Aguilar's hurt, and Ertz is now out. So when I was making my core plays video, Ertz was questionable. I thought he was going to play and push through it, but I guess not. So Greg Ward, I mean, it's just him and Dallas Goedert at this point. And then you got J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Miles Sanders. But just for receiving options, really, it's just Greg Ward and Dallas Goedert. So I think Ward can flirt with double-digit targets here, and I don't see how we don't play him. I think he's grading out as the second best value play at wide receiver this week for me. I can't remember who's number 1 on my spreadsheet. I don't think it's Sims. Sims is a really good value as well, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I have to check, but Greg Ward's second right now, and I think he's just an excellent play. And again, the Eagles need to win this game and to make the playoffs, and they can easily win this game through the air. The Giants have a terrible pass defense. They're 31st DVA versus the pass, and they're allowing 42.3 points per game to the wide receiver position, which is tied for second most in the NFL. So Greg Ward, I think, is a fantastic play. I said I like Carson Wentz, so I do think his upside's capped a little bit with no Zach Ertz. So I want exposure to his receiving options. So Greg Ward, he fits the bill here, and we're going to plug him in. I think he's an excellent play this week. Now at this point, I usually skip the third wide receiver position. We usually just fill that out last. So I'm going to skip to the tight end position now. And I think there's just a really easy play at tight end this week because of Zach Ertz being out. I think we look right to Dallas Goedert at 4,900. And I said earlier in the week, if Ertz happens to be out, I think we're going to try our best to lock in Dallas Goedert, and that's certainly what I'm going to be doing in this lineup. He's coming off a career game last week where he had 12 targets, 9 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown, 24.1 fantasy points. Looked great. The guy's talented. We know that. He was a high draft pick for the Philadelphia Eagles, and 24 fantasy points last week. I think he's going to smash versus the Giants. We saw Ertz smash versus the Giants a couple weeks ago. I don't see why Goddard can't do it again. Again, there's just a lack of options on this team. There's no Ertz. There's no Aguilar. There's no Alshon Jeffrey. There's no one on this team. Him and Greg Ward, and Greg Ward's not that good. So we're going to plug Dallas Goedert in here out of necessity. He's only 4,900. I think he's a pretty good play. And again, incentive to win this game. I want players that have incentive to win games, and I think we've pretty much done that on this lineup. Brett Hundley doesn't really matter, but Zeke, they need to win. Kamara needs to win. Adams needs to win. Greg Ward needs to win, and Goddard needs to win. So I'm liking the setup to this lineup. We have 4,000 left, so it's pretty easy to fill the rest of this lineup in. So at the flex spot, well, actually, let's fill out the wide receiver 3 this first. So you can play around with it. No, actually, let's go to the flex spot. So Sony Michel here, I'm liking. So I think you can go with a couple options here. You could look at DeAndre Washington. Josh Jacobs was rolled out, and I actually think DeAndre Washington is going to be popular, although it's a little bit of a tough matchup versus the Broncos. They have not given up a lot of points per game to the running back position. But with Jacobs being out, Washington is going to be the main back here. With Jacobs out in the 2 games he's been out this season, he's played 63% of the snaps in both games, and he has gotten a lot of carries. He had 23 attempts, 85 yards versus the Chargers, got into the end zone, and he also had 3 targets. Game before that, he had 14 carries, got into the end zone, 7 targets, 43 yards. I think he's a fine option, and I have no problems at all if you want to play him. The Broncos actually are 19th DVA versus the run, so I do think it's a pretty solid option. And actually, we can fit him in. It's just I really like Sony Michel as well. And I just think the game sets up better for Sony Michel. So I think Washington's going to be high owned, but sometimes you're just not feeling a guy. I think Washington's fine for cash games. I'll have him on my cash game rankings. But I like Sony Michel this week. It's a little risky because he doesn't really do anything in the passing game, but I think he's a good play this week. I'm feeling a good Sony Michel week. I said it earlier in the week. I think he was my first look lineup video, and I just think he's a good play. I think the Patriots look to establish the run here. Last season, when the Patriots won the Super Bowl, late in the season in the playoffs, they rode Sony Michel to a Super Bowl. They were giving him the ball a ton, and he was performing well. In the past 2 weeks, 19 carries, 89 yards, 21 carries, 96 yards. Fortunately, has not gotten to the end zone, so only had 11 fantasy points, but I think he can play just as good, if not better, than DeAndre Washington. It's a much better matchup, and the Patriots are 16-point favorites at home. I love that for my running backs, especially someone like Sony Michel, who does not do anything in the passing game. He'll get a couple of targets, but he's not a factor in the passing game. But when you're a 16-point favorite at home, probably don't have to pass the ball too much. So I think they just ride Sonny Michel here. Would not surprise me if he got 25 touches in this game. And it's a great matchup. They're 27th DVA versus the run, allowing 120 rushing yards per game, allowing nearly 28 points per game to running backs. I think Sonny Michel is a really good play this week at 4,900. And I think I honestly prefer him over DeAndre Washington. So if you're going to give me 20 plus carries on the Patriots versus Miami at home, I like Sonny Michel quite a bit this week. And at this point, we're going to plug in the free defense of the week. That's going to be the Chicago Bears. And they're just way too cheap at 2,100. Now, have they been good at all? No, not at all. They've been a very bad defense. But they only have a 16-point applied team total against them, which I believe is like one of the lowest on the slate. So at 2,100, I don't hate it. There's not going to be a lot of points scored in this game. Minnesota's not really playing for too much. So I don't hate it. I think 2,100 is a fine play. So we're going to plug them in. I think they're going to be the more popular defense of the week. At this point, we have 5,100 left, and there's a couple of options I don't mind. So I like Sims here at 4,700. I think that's a fine play. I mean, he's been good the past 2 weeks, 11 targets, 10 targets. Trey Quinn's on the IR, so he's been stepping up in that role, 5 catches, 6 catches, 3 touchdowns the past 2 weeks. Now it's a little fluky. But still, Dallas is like 24th DVA versus the pass, so it's not the worst play in the world. I expect them to be playing from behind, so they should be throwing the ball quite a bit, 15 points, 25 points. I don't think he's a bad play. That's leaving quite a bit of salary on the table. We could also look at Christian Kirk. If Brett Hundley's playing, you could pair, if it's a gross stack, but you could play Christian Kirk, especially if there's going to be rested starters on the Rams. I mean, I know we had a bad game last week, but I don't hate the idea of maybe pairing them up a little bit. It's not the worst play in the world, so you can play Christian Kirk if you just want the correlation. But if you want to max out your lineup here, I don't hate Golden Tate here. And we already have 2 options on the Philadelphia Eagles, so you could run it back for more correlation with Golden Tate. He actually had a pretty good game last week. He had 11 targets, 6 catches, 96 yards. They got into the end zone, but he had 15.6 fantasy points. So I don't think he's a bad play as well, so we could just plug him in just to get the full salary. So as of right now, we have Hundley, we have Zeke, we have Kamara, we have Adams, we have Greg Ward, we have Golden Tate, Dallas Goedert, Sonny Michel, and the Bears defense. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. It feels a little bit of a wacky lineup, but it's week 17, so this is going to be a wacky slate. I'll tell you that right now. A lot of things might not go the way we think may go. So you might want to play a little bit light on week 17. I don't know, maybe just my recommendation, but it should be a fun week. It's going to be the last week for regular season, so just enjoy it while it lasts because we're going to miss it in a couple of months. So anyway, guys, I'm going to leave you guys with that. Hope this video was helpful. If it was, remember to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at Pennell 16, and I'll see you guys in the next video.